Hello and welcome to another episode of the Project Purple podcast. I'm Dino, founder and CEO of Project Purple and the host of the Project Purple podcast. We have another interview for you coming up with three very special guests after a few quick updates. As we record this episode, this is just amazing. The Project Purple podcast has surpassed over 100,000 downloads. So I want to thank all the guests over the last I think we're almost at like 7 years. It's crazy. It's over 6 years plus, for allowing us to share their journeys, and to all the listeners out there for sharing and listening to this podcast. You guys have made this podcast what it has become. You are the reason why we do it. It's just been awesome. This has been just an awesome ride on this Project Purple podcast. Thank you to everyone who's believed in it. We're already through 2023 as we record this, and we set another record. So 2023 was our best year ever in terms of fundraising. And I just want to thank everyone who has supported, donated, or participated in a Project Purple event in 2023. We have already launched many of our 2024 marathon teams. Exciting news, we are back in the Boston Marathon as an official charity partner. This now makes us an official charity partner of the 5 largest world marathons. Many of our other 2024 races will be launching very soon. We're excited to bring back our virtual series as well. We'll be kicking things off in March with Purple Patties, which will be launching very soon. For those local in the Connecticut area, we are excited to announce our second annual Charity Pickleball Classic coming up on February 24th in Oxford, Connecticut. Super excited to bring that back. We had a lot of fun with that last fall, and off that success, we are coming back really quick with our second annual Charity Pickleball Classic. To learn more about all these great events, visit our website at projectpurple.org and make sure to follow us on social media to stay up to date on all things Project Purple. Without further ado, let's meet our 3 special guests today. We've got our reigning most, how do we put this? The reigning champion of most appearances on the Project Purple podcast, program manager. Welcome once again, Vin Camp.
Hey, everybody. Good to be here.
Now, Sam hasn't been on that much, but marketing manager, producer extraordinaire, Sam DaCosta. Welcome once again. Sam, you've been on before. You just haven't. I guess you would take the reins of like being involved in the podcast as much as I have, since you've been with us since day one on this.
Yeah, I'll take the claim to most like back end now for sure.
Correct. You probably listened to the most episodes along with myself. And then making his first appearance here on the Project Purple podcast, part of the marketing team, Zach Gerstner. Welcome to the Project Purple podcast for the first time, Zach.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited. And you don't know how long I've been waiting and asking Dino to be on it. So this is great.
Awesome. So this is kind of a special podcast for us here at Project Purple. I know we've done these in the past, and this is kind of, for those that know me, we don't sit on our successes, right? Like with cancer, especially with pancreatic cancer, you can't really like sit on things or celebrate. You kind of have to keep moving, right? Because cancer doesn't take a break. Neither does Project Purple. As those who know me well enough know, I've said that in the past. But this episode, we kind of take a step back and just look at the success that we've had in 2023. So I know this is titled the top 10 moments. I think we're going to give more than 10 because we've had such an amazing year. And you guys have played a big part in that. And, here at the home office. So what we wanted to do is bring some key staff members onto the podcast and just like, let's talk about it. Let's talk about these top 10 moments. And, some of them happened within the last couple of months. Some of them happened like early on in the year. And I think it's always just a great way to kind of reflect and also give thanks to those people for making 2023 such a great year. So, with that, I'm going to open it up. So I know we kind of said, in no particular order, we were going to kind of go through our top 10. I know recently the marketing team put together a great top 10, which was a survey. So maybe we'll start with Sam DaCosta, maybe giving one of his top 10 moments. And again, Sam, this doesn't have to be in any order, but just something that that you feel was like a top 10.
Gotcha. Man, I thought there was a lot of really cool stuff, but I mean, I'm always partial to those moments where we get to share survivor stories. That was kind of like a little bit more of a broad topic in the top 10 because it was hard to pick just one. But any chance we got to sit down in person with survivors and interview people, the podcast is, kind of a part of that. It's really special. But any chance that we get to actually go out, sit down, get the camera out and have a good conversation in person with these survivors is really, really special to us. So that's definitely one I'd like to put in.
Yeah, I think this year was really special for us. I think as the podcast has grown, as we're recording a podcast, I think we've gotten the ability to really kind of carve out a niche, I guess you would say, in sharing so many survivor stories, right, and journeys. And I think this year was really special from a survivor standpoint as well. And I guess I'll throw in somewhat of a combo here. Our Hall of Fame, which has become kind of this survivor thing, and not necessarily this year we inducted someone who had passed, but it was more of a celebration of who that person was, of surviving and thriving while he was battling. And that was Kevin King, and his wife gave an amazing speech about Kevin, and it was about how he battled and how well he battled, right, in his journey. And then you throw in the fall, we did our first ever Survivor Summit. So I know, Sam, you talk about the podcast, but I think like this overlaying reach here was like 2023 was this little bit of a year of survivors. And then we even had some survivors run on our marathon teams, right?
Yeah, that was one of mine. So Sam, good kickoff on that because you stole one of mine. But I mean that was, we had a few runners, I think on a lot of the teams. We had runners, survivors run for us, which is always special, right? I mean, I think that just brings our messaging and why we're doing what we're doing up to a completely like different level. It just adds another layer to what we're doing. But not even, for me, to add in, the golf outing, the Hall of Fame, the survivor stories. I think the blogs in general, for me to overlay like that whole podcast blog series that the marketing team has put together. I think just with the stories in general, there were so many stories of not only survivors, but also which we're celebrating them, but also, why people got into running, why people are doing it. And I think that big general picture of that was really impactful, throughout the course of the year. And to see that grow for me, from the marketing, standpoint, kudos, you guys knocked it out of the park with all those stories you were able to put together.
If you think about, and Vin, I love how you mentioned the golf outing. So the golf, we do this Hall of Fame induction during the golf reception at the end of the day. But if you even go back, like our biggest sponsor this year in our golf outing, he was a partner with the other company, Charney Company and Tavros, right? Charney's dad is a survivor. Yeah. Right. So if you really think back to they've gotten super involved with what we're doing here, and special thanks to both those companies, for supporting our golf outing. Give them a quick shout out here. But, like if you start to like really peel back the layers and then we start looking at some of those relationships that we've kind of strengthened in 2023, kind of comes back to survivors, which is kind of really kind of freaky, now that we think about that, and how it's all kind of intertwined into that. So it's just really, really special. 2023 was a special year for that. Zach, I know you worked a lot on the podcast. You've been doing a lot of things for us. I know you've dealt with a lot of the survivors and finding them on social media. What's that been like for you as we stay on the survivor topic here?
I mean, it's been really cool, right? Like, because the way I look at it is I haven't done anything like this in my career so far. It's been very short-lived, but, it's just really unique to kind of hear their story, and no one story is the same. So when you're talking to these people, and it's also finding like the language and kind of, I guess my biggest thing was, am I going to overstep and say something that is going to, I guess, like push them away? But at the end of the day, they're just normal people and they just really want to be heard. And this is honestly like one of the best things about working here at Project Purple has been being that way for these survivors to get their stories out there. And then just you'll be surprised how many people reach out to us and they're like, oh, I relate to that. I'm going through this. And you just connect everyone together. And that's like the strongest piece of, I guess, Project Purple that you don't see a lot in like some of the other charities and whatever. They don't really focus on the personal aspect and personal relationship with the people that they are raising the money for. And I feel like that's kind of like the biggest thing that I've taken away from reaching out and talking to all these people. And, I feel like you all do such a good job at including them and making them feel like they are Project Purple and their voices do matter. And they really do. And I feel like I'm just rambling now, but it's the best, like I don't know how to say it, but it's like the best part of working at Project Purple is allowing these people to be heard and just get their stories out there and really like make the impact, because that's who we're fighting for at the end of the day. So
yeah. And I think there's like
powerful.
a good portion of like the survivors that are apt to share their story largely because when they first got their diagnosis, the first thing they did was run in and grab a bunch of statistics, and the statistics are terrifying. But the reality is there's a lot of also really positive stories on the other side. And there are like really positive examples. And I think that a lot of survivors we feature, piece of feedback that I get is like some of them kind of wish that they had been able to hear more of the stories that they themselves are sharing. So we kind of give them an opportunity to do that.
It's great stuff. All right, I'm going to go down to here in my screen. Vin is below me. So we're going to go to Vin here and share one of his top 10 moments for the year.
I had a lot at being the first time I oversaw the teams and being here, not only the most appearances on here, but the most tenured outside of you, Dino. So there's a lot of experiences. But I guess I'll go with, with the Blue Gala dream. This was higher on my list that I made my personal 10, but I think that was a real
Blue Dream.
The Blue Dream. Yeah. It was real unique. One, it was, connected me back to my hometown, in Southampton, where it took place. But I think that was just really a special moment. I wasn't able to be there. Dino was there and representing us, of course. And that was, to see the pictures and hear the stories and, hear everything that went on there and to be represented at that gala, which I've heard of before, but never really been a part of, was, really special in multiple ways for me. Not only to be honored there, but to have that link back, to my hometown, type thing. Now that, I've moved to Connecticut and now down in South Carolina, is a real good, like, circle for me to complete, and you're a real unique situation.
Yeah, I think you guys have heard me say this. Like, we don't really. I try to find the proper analogy here. Like, you never count your chickens until your eggs hatch, right? And but Vin, being here the longest, like, like there's always like, not that we rely on this, and this is like the hard part from budgeting. There's always every year there's something. I'd say big, but yeah, I mean, I guess over the 13 years, there's always been like, as we've evolved, right, in terms of like where we are from an organizational standpoint, and where I mean with this and this aspect is like the dollars raised, right? So in the very beginning, it's like, whoa, we got a $5,000 check like that first year, and you're like, wow, man, like when you're doing $40,000, 5,000, it's a big number, right? It becomes, a significant percentage of what you're bringing in. Fast forward now to where we've seen every year, we kind of, there's things that happen in a good way that impact us in a positive way to allow us to continue to do the things we're doing in a positive way. And not that we necessarily are looking for those, right? Like a couple of years we've had, runners. I remember, back in 2015, we had a runner and, she raised $100,000. Right. And that was like, at that point, you're like, oh my God, like that's never happened before. And, like this is amazing. And, but we're doing all the right things from a fundraising perspective. And then from what we do with the money, right? Like our programs and the programs that we're supporting. Right. And so we get to this point this year where we're like, We came out of COVID. Last year was kind of still a weird year, right? Like in the beginning of the year, we still dealt with some things, from an organizational standpoint, that were out of our control, in terms of races and stuff like that, still kind of being stuck and not being stuck, but still kind of going in that 2020 mode and 21 mode. So this year was like that first full year where I feel like we felt like things were back to pre-pandemic, and so we had this opportunity. And again, not that we were expecting this, but we had done all the right things before that. And I think it's just kind of a culmination. And, that gift, we were blessed, man. Blue Dream, was, through the Pantelides family, which, last year we put out a named fund in memory of, an honor, I should say, at the time of the Pantelides family, which has been a big supporter of ours, over the last 6 years, due to, Jim Pantelides, was a big part of our community, at many of our New York races, battling pancreatic cancer. And unfortunately, he passed away in March of this year or April of this year. And Blue Dream, which, is a great event that happens every year for, I think, the last 6 or 7 years in Southampton. They really give back to a lot of amazing charities. And we were really blessed to receive, the $175,000 check, to support our efforts here in terms of research and in honor of of Jim Pantelides and the family and everything they've done for the Greek Orthodox community there in Southampton and across the country. So it's just really kind of like a culmination of things, but really, really special. And, clearly for you, Vin, being born and raised in Southampton, that had to be pretty surreal.
Yeah. When you announced it, it took me back a little bit. Cause like I said, I've heard about it. I know people that have attended it, but, to have us, an organization that I'm a part of and represent, to be a part of that, it was really, really special. And like you said, it's not something we went after actively. It just, for lack of a better term, fell into our laps, so to say. And, like you said, it's all the hard work. Those things just, hard work pays off, and, those things come out. And it's really, really special to see that kind of stuff happen.
Yeah, it's awesome. All right, let's go to, we're going to head down below to Zach. And Zach, this is your opportunity to kind of share one of your top 10 moments.
Yeah, so I guess I'm hoping I'm not going to take anyone's, but for me, it was really cool to be at the New York City Marathon for the first time, right? Like I grew up in New York and I still live in New York.
You just took Vin's second one, but that's all right.
Sorry, Vin. But no, because like you hear all about the New York City Marathon, but I've never been there. And so finally got to the point where I had the opportunity to go with Project Purple. And it was really cool, like the entire experience and just interacting with the run team, as well as like, I guess their families or like friends and all their supporters just at the different cheer zones. And then at the dinner after, and just kind of, right. Because I guess the way I look at it is I do a lot of social media. So I'm always interacting with these people through a screen. So it's nice to put like a voice behind the face that I'm actually texting and talking to. And it's really nice to actually hear their stories and hear more of why they're running. And like, I guess, right. It's nice to be out in the front lines and kind of not just stuck behind the phone or something or behind a computer. Like I'm sure Sam, like, what I'm talking about. It's nice to actually be able to interact with these people through like real conversation, because I guess that's where it's going away. But I'm getting sidetracked. But anyways, back to the New York City Marathon. I just honestly had a great time. Like you're just there and the energy is surreal. Everybody's happy. It's a good time. No one's like, even the runners, right? If you're just there cheering them on, like 26 miles, it's a lot. Like I could tell, I saw people cramping, but just standing there saying, you got this, keep pushing. They look at you and then they give you a smile, even though they're probably going through hell. I've never ran a marathon, but it was just a really unique and surreal experience.
Zach, I think you're saying that you want to sign up for a marathon next year.
I'm going to piggyback on that, Dino, because I think at the cheer zone in Manhattan, I think those words came out of his mouth that he could run in like a sub 5, sub 4. I forget. I don't know, but That's how I got sucked into my first one. So I think it's Zach's getting sucked into his first one now.
I said I think I could do a sub 5, but I would probably need some sort of training. I originally said I didn't need any training to do a sub 5, but then I kept seeing everyone cramp up. And even now, like if I play basketball for like an hour, my body is like shot and I'm cramping. So I'm going to need some sort of training if I'm going to run a marathon, but we'll see. All right. We'll cross that bridge when it comes.
Never say never, Zach, as they say.
Right.
Yeah, New York was pretty special, and I'm glad you guys got to experience that, from the team and record set. Records are made to be broken, so the bar's been set there in New York. In terms of fundraising, Vin, what do we came in and we're still counting. Matches are still coming in, but what was the record set there?
As of yesterday, we're at 514,448 to be exact, and that was with a bunch of matches that came in, the past month. Yes, 514,000. Amazing. To see that number. We had a discussion leading up into the marathon on where this team was going to go, and I think we had some dinner bets going on back and forth.
I think I won the bet though.
Won the bet, and that number just kept climbing and climbing, and it was surreal and special to really see where this team brought it. But like you said, records are meant to be broken, so 2024 better get ready.
Yeah, really, really special, and I think there were some really, really cool things. I think from Sam, your standpoint, from a marketing perspective, I think this year, having a full team, both cheer zones, just really cool how we were able to capture so much, of the stories and the things that I think Zach kind of alluded to, just like getting to know these runners. I know Vin works with them, day in, day out, but from a marketing perspective to really kind of share and guide these runners through that journey. And New York is such a special place. I think for the obvious, it is the mecca of everything. And when it comes to marathoning, it's the world's largest marathon. Everyone brings it that day. And it's just really, really special. And I think we've kind of grown as a group as we support those runners on race weekend and all the things we do. All right, my turn here for top 10 moments. And one of my top 10 moments, and there's so many, right? And so this becomes really difficult. But I think for me this year is just the records that we set with our patient financial aid program. And so this has been a record year. I think we're up to like 263 families that we've supported this year financially. 200,000, in terms of patient financial aid. That's hard dollars. I know this for a fact because I was just helping process a bunch of bills the other day, just chipping in because we're trying to get as many people as possible supported during this holiday season. And so just really, really special for me because if you look back at the inception and this is kind of like one of those foundational pieces for me, as I say, and as I look back, when I had this idea to start Project Purple, it was about helping people, helping families through this journey. And you might say, well, what is help? How have you done that? Or like, what does it mean to like, okay, so you're paying someone's mortgage or their copays or their utility bills. Man, it's just so wild that, if we look back, I think now we're close to like 1,500 families. I know we say over 1,000, but I was looking at some numbers and I think it's like close to 1,500 now, and you look at the dollars, like it's well over $1 million, in terms of what we've been able to provide back. That's some real numbers, man. And, I think as anyone listening knows the fact of inflation, how costly things have become, to be able to help people to go in and support families during this critical time is just so powerful and so impactful. So to me, like one of my, this is probably up there, like one or two. It is in my top 10, but it's just the success of the PFA program. And to kind of caveat to that, our Nutrade program, which we put another 200,000 total. So, this year alone, we're talking about $400,000 back to patients and their families for support, from financial aid, and then from meals, which to me, like, again, is just so impactful and so powerful. And, really kind of, I always say we kind of stay in our lane and we worry about ourselves. But, for us to have that impact this year is just monumental.
Yeah, I'll jump in. That one was on mine as well, up there as well. Because, again, since I've been here, seeing, that number increase every year, and seeing, not understanding it really when I first worked, like same thing, like, oh, why are we paying like a mortgage? But you know what, it opened up that sense of like that stress of having to pay a bill, which, we're already, these people are already dealing with the stress of going through this disease, to alleviate that, to free up some payments for, medications or whatever, hospital stays or whatever it is, to see that grow over the years, from my point of view, it has been, really, impactful on many levels, and to see like the food be able to be provided to, families, again, why worry about cooking? We can get you stuff. We can get you on a program. Like, just worry about this hope in this battle, and like, we got your back on the rest. We can support a lot of people, and it's really special to see that too.
Yeah, it's pretty special. And I hope we do more in 2024. A lot of that's predicated on, what we do here as an organization, in terms of fundraising. So, full disclosure, I say that often, like, I don't know why, but I don't know, maybe just because the way it goes. But, our budget this year was 150 for PFA, and we upped it because of the success of our programs, and because of the supporters and the people listening and watching. So, there's that thing I've always said, and I've said it often: the more we raise, the more we're going to put out. So I think that's just a testament. Being able to have a record year and supporting families is just a testament to everyone who supported us, because we don't do it alone. So, all right, back up to Sam DaCosta for another top 10 moment here.
Yeah,
that hasn't been mentioned.
One that hasn't been mentioned.
Yeah.
Can I take one that's a little bit off the actual board itself? Because I thought that the Survivor Summit was like a really powerful and inspiring moment. Just to get that many. So I'll step back and think of the podcast for a minute. When we first started the podcast, we would get like 10, 20 views, and like, it's hard to start anything. And in those moments, like, there were days where that felt a little bit disheartening. And then I kind of reframed it and started thinking about it. I was like, well, if you had 10 to 20 people in a room physically listening to these stories, how would you feel about that? That would feel pretty important and pretty powerful, right? So, obviously, like, the podcast numbers have changed. We've got like 100,000 views, but now we actually got the opportunity to have survivors together and put that many people in a room and have each other hear those stories and have each other hear very, very valuable information from some top researchers in their areas, and some experts in their areas. And to be able to physically see that happen was really cool. It was kind of a full circle moment, almost poetic, where we're getting all these views now. There's all these things going on, but at the end of the day, it still comes down to getting people into a room and hearing their stories and sharing their stories. So I thought that was awesome. And I could ramble on and on for hours about how much fun I had at that event, and how powerful I thought it was, but I will give the floor back.
Yeah, I know Vin and Zach, you guys weren't able to attend, but I think, I guess I'll just throw in here. Anytime you get people in a room and they're all like-minded, it's pretty wild to see what happens, just to be and I think that was that moment, when we got all these people in the room together, and you just kind of sit back and just let them go. and just let them like really kind of connect is just really, really special. And this did, I mean, we haven't done anything to this degree, in the past. I think we've had like in our teams, we've had some people like that, like connected and, survivors, like family members and stuff. And I've seen a little bit of that over the years. But those are quick interactions. Like people are in and out of, meet and greets or dinners or, after parties, right? It's not as if everyone's sitting there for 8 hours, like connecting and sharing. And so it's pretty wild. And so, yeah, that's a great one. And I go back to the very beginning. I think you mentioned the survivor stories and everything. I think it's just so powerful. It's why we do what we do.
Yeah.
So,
And I think, I expected, and I did learn a lot from like the experts that we brought in, but like the survivors absolutely like took me to school, man. Like I learned so much more about what their experience is and the things that they go through. Because before I only was able to talk to one or two at a time, but once they get going about things like the post-Whipple attack, which isn't super studied, but it's one of those things that a lot of them seem to go through, and then they kind of were riffing off each other and building on that idea. I just kind of came back, was so motivated, so many more questions for like research topics, so many more ideas. Like that event just like it lit a fire. I mean, how could it not being what it is? But it just lit a fire. I thought it was awesome.
good stuff. All right, back down to Vin for one of his top 10 moments.
Going back to the races, I think, because I lived in the races this year. We already touched on New York, but I'm going to hit Chicago. Chicago, was right behind New York in terms of fundraising. So they're just under $450,000 raised. But the positive or my top 10 moment there is the largest team we ever had. 123 charity runners. I think we had 150 or so at the end of own entries and that kind of stuff, or deferrals. And just to see the size of that team. And I wasn't able to be in Chicago because I was at a wedding, but the day of the race, to see all the pictures and to hear all the stories, from the runners saying that the streets were purple. And then that's, the more people we get into these races, the more we're able to do, the more those streets are going to be purple, and people are going to be seeing that running to beat pancreatic cancer on the back. So 133 plus runners on a course. I think that's pretty, speaks volumes to, what we've done in Chicago and, what we're going to do, in the future.
Yeah. How do I put this? Because then I'd sound like a jerk because I just said New York is the best, but I don't know, man. Chicago is like slowly creeping up to like be like a hard like 1B or like a 1C, I guess. Because I'm torn, man. I'm really so like you got to take your emotions out of it and look at it from a logical standpoint. And for me, emotionally, like I'm always going to be emotionally connected to New York because that was the first race we got into. It was my first marathon. I've only done Chicago once. I've done New York 3 times, and there's a reason for that because it's just like the energy. But Chicago has like, and coming out of the pandemic, like Chicago just, I don't know, man. They just like kept it together, or they just like, like the race. I'm talking about the race here. They just like brought it up another level or two, man. And this year's Chicago Marathon, for those that are like, we probably have some hardcore runners running. It's the fastest marathon ever, in Chicago. So the world record was set there, or the course record was set, right? And the U.S. in both on the men and the women, so it was a super fast race. I think we've grown really like dramatically in the Chicago market, which is really wild. And just like how that race has just become like this really, really special race for us now, in our portfolio. And not only have we seen like all the special stuff grow, but we've also seen the numbers, which is really cool for like a top 5 marathon in the world, that we're able to kind of like make those leaps the way we're making them. which is a little bit of a challenge in a lot of the other races, right? Like, we can't show up to Boston with 150 runners. But Chicago, we can do that. And it's just become this really special race. And yeah, this year was pretty cool, man. It was cold as shit, but like, I always say like it's okay. Like those are good running days and they're okay spectating days, but that's good because like the runners are going to have a great race.
Yeah, as long as I'm not cheering so much that the camera shakes, I don't mind that cold.
Yeah, yeah. And I think we've kind of evolved too in Chicago. I think like the energy and everything that we've kind of done here at Project Purple really kind of resonates on that course, right? And not only from like our runners' perspective, but like from, we got a pretty cool shout out this year from, and I'll give her a shout out, Emma Bates, who was, finished, as one of the top Americans in the past at that race and, was gunning for it this year. And she didn't have the race she had, but, she gave us a nice little shout out because, we were out there early providing some purple energy that we do for all the runners, especially our runners, but also like all the runners that come through. So Chicago's really become like a really, really cool thing for us. And I'm excited to kind of see where it goes next year because we'll have an even bigger team. And, for those that have never run Chicago, I would highly recommend that you put it on your bucket list because it has really become something special. All right, over to Zach for one of his top tens.
So this one wasn't as well. It's pretty big for us, but not as big as some of the other ones. But I'm going to go with the Charity Pickleball Classic for two reasons. One is I kind of worked very hands-on with this and just getting it off the ground, getting it out there and everything. And then this is the second and most important reason is the way when we started to look at the event, we looked at, I guess, people in our community to play pickleball, whereas we needed to switch it and get people who played pickleball who aren't in our community. And that's where I feel like we were the most impactful with this event because we're going out and we're getting these people that most of them never even heard of Project Purple. Some of them never even heard of pancreatic cancer, and just talking to them and getting that awareness to them, right? The awareness piece is one of the biggest aspects, and just kind of just talking to them. Like I've had so many good conversations with some of the pickleball players who signed up for us, some of them who didn't, but they passed our flyers along and everything like that because they thought we had a great mission and they wanted to do what they could to help and just help us put on a successful event. So we're bringing in these people that we're bringing them into our community now that were relatively unaware, or even if they were, they weren't impacted, but just kind of bridging the gap between the two, I guess, different spaces. It's really helped us. And obviously that's why we're going to have another pickleball event in February, which Dino mentioned, but it's just really cool to get like an outside of the community perspective into our space and what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, pickleball is cool, man. Like I know we did it as a team building event, and that was kind of like the catalyst to say like, hey, I mean, there was also one of our runners who had a very successful event in Kentucky, which certainly helps. And clearly, I think anything active, I like to use the term endurance, right? Any of these endurance events can always be, put into a charity model, right? And I just think it's just another great way. And to echo Zach's, comments there, you don't have to be a runner, but anyone, doing anything who, is impacted by this disease, if there's a will, there's a way, I guess I would say. Right. And I think with pickleball, it's been really cool to see that growth and clearly off the success we had last year to bring it back again fairly quickly here, like in less than 6 months, because I think we're on to something and hopefully we can continue to build it.
I don't know, that fast turnaround seems to be a trend with our outside events because the golf outing turned around pretty quick that first year too, which is what I want to piggyback on what Zach was saying too. Great event, but that first year is that learning year, right? Like that story's out there now. People are aware of it now. Even though it's coming back in the fall, I think it's going to be that many more people are going to be involved, and it could grow into something this isn't our niche, right? It's not something that we're known for, but, again, let's add to that portfolio. I think it's a great piece. And, I wasn't there, but again, it was a great event and pictures look great and more people are going to be involved in the spring. It's going to be exciting to see that.
Can't wait.
Yeah, that was another cool, like, full circle thing because, we've had the intern program a long time, and our current team of interns is unbelievable. That was one of those events where you guys kind of drove the bus on that, and like all of you have a lot to be proud of throughout your whole internship cycle here, but that one especially, like, that's hard to do, is to start an event from the ground up. And we have experience for you guys to lean on as far as events, but like we were just as new to pickleball as you guys were. So to see you guys take the ball and run with it, like, I was super proud of that. I thought that was so awesome to see, and all the collaboration. It was it's excellent, man. Like, you guys deserve your flowers for that, because that was a really cool event. That's hopefully going to be a staple for us for a while.
Great stuff. All right, my turn here to add one more here, and then we're going to open it up to kind of round it out to 10 for anything that we missed here. But so for me, I go back to our programs, and I guess maybe I kind of preface this like from a CEO standpoint, founder / CEO. Like I look at it from a different lens sometimes. And again, as I said before, like the more we raise, the more we do. And this year was another record year for us. Not the most, it might be actually, but when you look at our other program, which is research, and some of these we haven't like fully disclosed, I guess, like they happen, but I know we're waiting on some stuff. So I know Sam's probably going to cringe here when I bring this up, but we gifted $100,000 to a smaller collaboration called Trick, which involves genetic clinical trials between Johns Hopkins, Memorial Sloan Kettering, OHSU, and University of Pennsylvania, to help follow, patients going through pancreatic cancer, and in the clinical trials available for those patients that have a gene mutation related to pancreatic cancer, right? Because there's nothing right now. Currently, there's not like a large database set for these patients, and we do know that up to 10% of the cases that are diagnosed in pancreatic cancer come from some sort of genetic mutation. So this is kind of really exciting stuff because the data doesn't lie, but you need a place to collect the data. And so the hope here is that by collecting this data with this patient set, that we can understand clinical trials, which really work, which doesn't work, where science can kind of look and help patients better in terms of outcomes and treatments. So really exciting to be able to support that effort as that effort gets off the ground. Just recently, within the last couple of weeks, we announced another grant to the University of Nebraska Medical Center for $50,000. And that's going to help support their program in early detection. They've got one of the only rapid autopsy programs in the world, with patients who have unfortunately passed from pancreatic cancer, but they're doing some really novel research with tissue and all the data that they've collected, just due to technologies advancing as we've seen this huge, I guess, everyone thinks of like technology advances of AI, which is great. But there's a lot of other technology advances that have happened, over the last 2 years, for these researchers to dissect tissue and blood and stuff. So there's really some exciting stuff. There's a lot happening. I know, people always hear that, like there's so much happening, but there really is. We're in a very unique time when it comes to cancer research, and not only from the AI aspect, but just from a technology standpoint. So there's a lot happening. So that grant is going to help support that effort. And then just recently, I know we announced 75,000 a couple months back to Hartford Healthcare to help them support their early detection program as they get that off the ground. But we just kind of ponied up and gave them another 175,000, bringing the total to 250,000, $250,000 to Hartford Healthcare here in Connecticut to really support their early detection efforts. Super excited for this partnership. Hartford Healthcare has now become the number one healthcare system in the state of Connecticut. We're based in Connecticut. This was actually the first time we've ever done anything. We've supported Yale in a very small aspect, but from this standpoint, from the financial dollars that we're investing here in the state of Connecticut, is just super exciting. And our goal with Hartford is to hopefully, get into every single community here in Connecticut and, get people screened, for high risk and for early detection of pancreatic cancer. So super excited. So that brings our total for the year to $400,000 in new research grants. So when you look at the numbers, I mentioned before PFA program. So this is like my top 10 second moment, like combining the two. So this is like a third one, I guess. But if you look at the programs, I just do the quick math, 200,000 PFA, financial aid assistance, 200,000 Nutrade, that's 400,000. We throw the 400,000 here in research. That's 800,000 this year in programs to support pancreatic cancer patients and pancreatic cancer researchers. So to me, my second moment here was research, but I kind of tied both of those in there, just in terms of what we're giving back. And again, the more we raise, the more we put back into supporting patients and supporting clinical efforts, in terms of helping finding early detection or curative treatments for this disease called pancreatic cancer. So that to me was kind of my second, top 10 moment.
Yeah, I think it's always, again, PFA is great. Research is what we're striving for, to find early detection, to end this thing. And what's our mission? A world without pancreatic cancer. Without that research, we're not doing that. And to be able to give these numbers and to let runners and donors know what our money is actually going to, it's amazing to see that those funds going back into communities and programs that are advancing what our mission is.
So powerful, my friend. All right, so let's open this up. We got two left. So Zach's chomping at the bit. He almost cut me off there.
Well,
I didn't even get the words out.
I just have one that I feel like everyone's kind of, and it's something we've been pushing at least a lot from a marketing standpoint recently, is that we are one of two charities that are an official charity partner of 5 of the largest world marathons, and no one's touched on it yet. So I thought I'd get that out there as one of the two before, like that's very impressive. I haven't been here that long, but I mean, only 2 charities, one of 2. I mean, that's very impressive.
I was gonna say it was cool to get back to be back in Boston, because when I started, I think in 2017 we were, or at least we went, because we had a runner doing the Pioneer. I don't remember. And then for years, like, why are we not in Boston? Like, we can't get into Boston. We can't get into, and then to come back this year and get 5 spots, like Dino touched on before. I mean, I had 85 applications for 5 spots. And to be in one of those world majors, Marathon Monday up there in Boston is going to be pretty special. And 5 of the world majors, if we can ever figure out how to get into Tokyo, if anyone knows, let us know. So we'll be in all 6, but pretty special, to be in all 5, because everyone wants to run these majors, and we have waiting lists for them all. So it's cool to give people that opportunity to be able to run their bucket list dreams, that they want to run.
Yeah.
We also have a Project Purple runner running we're gonna have our first 6-star finisher in Bill Nugent, so stay tuned for that story, because that's coming up soon. So
yeah, no, Sam, that's a great point. And
yeah.
I think I go back to the very beginning of all this, and running was so good to me. And I think for us, as Vin mentioned, we were in Boston from 2014 to 2018. So we were there for 4 years, and then I don't know. I guess you could say we took a hiatus, and now we're back, and hopefully we'll be there for a while. But the success of all this comes down to our runners, right? And I just remember, another foundational piece of Project Purple is running. It was so good to me, and when I had this idea to start the charity, because running was so good to me, and because pancreatic cancer is typically like very negative for families and for actually the people going through it, I wanted to find like a positive outlet. I'm always about positivity. Not that I'm like, like this, I'm trying to think of an analogy here, but I think I'm always in my life trying to find positive solutions to problems that exist and challenges, I should say. And, this challenge of pancreatic cancer, I thought, this positive solution was running. And so as Vin mentioned, 5 spots, which we're blessed to have. It's awesome to be back, but 85 people, right? And so to me, that's 85 people touched by this disease that 80 aren't really going to get an opportunity to run. So that's part of the challenge from our organizational standpoint is like, how can we, provide and grow? It's great to be back in Boston, and it's great that we have, these 5 world majors, the 5 largest marathons in the world, which is just awesome. And we're one of very few charities that have that designation for 2024. Hopefully we'll continue to do that and continue to grow. But it is very, very special to be able to be, one of very few charities that have spots in all those races, which is pretty damn special. All right, one more. We need one more here to kind of round out our top 10 moments here, and then we'll maybe throw in 1 or 2, but really quick. Anyone have a top 10 moment that they want to mention?
I have 2 more, but
you can go 2.
I can say, so one is our record year in fundraising. And I'm sure we're going to touch on that. Dino, I'm assuming you might have touched on that and we might steal one of yours. But our record year, the teams, I believe, set a record year in their fundraising. The 2023 teams raised 1.35 million. If you add in the 24 teams that are going, it's 1.46, because that's in this year. Mm-hmm. But the total overall for Project Purple is 1.5, almost 2.6, 2.5, 2.6. I don't know what the updated numbers are, but as of last week, I think we're about 5,000 short of 2.6, which
as of today, which we're, 8 days to the end of the year, we're like just shy of like business booked. We're over 2.5. I think it's like 2.5. 2,555,000, I think. And our run rate is just shy of 2.6. I think, we have, the next 8 days tend to be very busy, right? Because of people making donations to, for various reasons, whether it's tax or, for whatever the reason may be. So, like we have a very good shot. We've already hit a record, as we said, in the opening. This has been our best year ever at 2.5 million. Last year was 1.8. So it's a significant increase. And records are made to be broken. And the bar has been set, but we've got 8 days to try to see where that record gets set.
Absolutely, yeah. So just special again, seeing what that growth was from last year and setting that record. Again, being here 6 years, it's just amazing to see that growth and more runners being involved, more programs opening up, getting our feet into other areas. It all contributes. The virtual program, the stories being told. I think this top 10 moments, I think, culminates with that star or that icing on the cake of that hitting that record. So yeah, that's one of my last 2.
Cool. I got one I'm going to throw in here, and we're on the podcast, and I know in the opening we mentioned it. But it's pretty wild. And I know, the 100,000 downloads, but, talking to Zach yesterday, and I'm not, we look at the numbers. I don't like sit on them and celebrate them. But like yesterday, I was kind of looking at some of the numbers and I was like, wow, man, like the last 6 months, like our podcast has we've seen this massive spike, just across the board and views. I was talking also to Sarah on our team, who does all the video content. And, she even said like our YouTube numbers, from podcast episodes have just grown. So to me, the podcast, this is a really unique podcast because it's about Project Purple, but 99% of our podcasts are about other people, right? And helping to raise awareness. That's how I've always seen this podcast as an awareness tool to amplify and to share. And, it kind of has evolved into, the survivor stories. And, we bring on clinicians to talk about, all the latest and greatest in research and what they're doing, which is awesome. But so I think like one of them, for me, the top 10 moments, is like, hitting that number, which is, I guess because society, we're judged by numbers and performance, I guess. And, you do have to have that growth mindset. You always have to kind of get better. And I think for us, like hitting that $100,000, download or listen, whatever you want to use, whatever terminology, to me, it's all the same. Is pretty special. And just to see like, this was just some faint idea with an intern from Quinnipiac who was doing like a sports hockey thing to see where it's gone, Sam. Is just pretty cool to me. So I throw that in as a top 10 moment, is just the growth and the evolution of the podcast, hitting that big number, which we kind of thought we could do that in the beginning of the year, but I knew we had to kind of push. But this has been a record year in terms of the podcast of all plays. This has been our most successful and highly listened year throughout the last 6 years, so which is pretty wild.
Yeah, and like I know we kind of keep going back to it, but it's just so. I mean, it's so different from like what it started as. Like when we first did the show, we were just hitting record and kind of like talking, and we didn't know what it was going to be. And I think that personally, like my philosophy with a lot of stuff is like that's how you should start almost any new project. Like you could sit and plan for days and days and days and do nothing. Or if you want to do a podcast, you could just throw a mic on, start playing with some different formats, put it out and see what seems to work. And, for us, obviously, really quickly, we figured out that like the survivor stories, whenever you can get a survivor story, or like doctors, or experts, or, and we can do some introspective stuff, but like, I would say that part of the show is a testament to our attitude to like, hey, just get started. Like the pickleball event, like just get started. You can always optimize, you can always tweak things, you can always make adjustments, but you're never going to know how things are until you kick them off. And I mean, I think you can apply that to almost anything in life. Like I think to me, step one is to just go, and step two is to figure out what worked. So huge testament to that. I think it like speaks to our culture here as a whole, like our in-house staff culture in the way that we are.
Awesome. Well, guys, that's 2023. Thank you guys for allowing the public to kind of hear our top 10 moments. Thank you guys for all the hard work this year. And thank you to everyone listening and watching. 2023 has been a great year for us. It's been our best year ever. But as I've said before, records are made to be broken. So it's just a matter of where the bar gets set. And then 2024, we can't wait to rock and roll, literally and physically, because we've got big plans and big goals to beat that we set in this year. So awesome stuff. Thank you guys for being on the Project Purple podcast, Vin, for setting the all-time record here in terms of guests. And Zach, welcome. You're on your first episode.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me again.
Thank you for having me for the first time.
Thank you, producer Sam, for once again being part of the Project Purple podcast.
Thanks, Ben. Been a blast. Can't wait to see where we go.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Project Purple podcast. If you liked today's episode, please share this episode and follow the Project Purple podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. This is a wrap of another episode of the Project Purple podcast. Thanks for listening, and until next time, be safe.